everyone, so today I wanted to share with you guys a full tutorial on how I make Concha piping paste. This is something that I came up with. I'm not sure if this is exactly how it's made, but this is how I make it and it works really good. I've done countless amount of conchas using this pipeable paste. When I first started making conchitas, I will always see reels on Instagram where they're piping stuff on the conchas, and I always wonder what it was. When I will go down to the comments, they will say, oh, well, it's the same paste that we put on top of the conchas, but it's pipeable, but they will never share how to make it. So I came up with this technique. I hope it helps somebody out there. So I'm starting off by making cake goop. It's equal amounts of flour, shortening, and vegetable oil. Here I'm using half a cup of vegetable shortening, half a cup of vegetable oil, and half a cup of regular all-purpose flour. I'm starting by mixing the shortening and the oil first and combining it as best as I can before I add the flour. I'm scraping my bowl in between mixing the shortening and the oil together before I add the flour. At this point, the shortening, there's still little lumps of shortening in the batter, but this is going to be taken care of once I add the flour, and I just let the machine run and let it do its work. Always scraping in between just to make sure that everything is getting incorporated. At this point, it's not ready. I'm going to let it run for about 4 to 5 more minutes until it's nice and smooth. For those that are wondering what this is used for, or what cake goop is used for, so it basically is a cake release. So it replaces the need to have to use any nonstick spray on your cake pans, or for having to line them with parchment paper, or from using butter and flour and dusting your pans before adding your cake batter. It lasts a very long time, or it lasts like around 3 months in the refrigerator. I like to place mine all the way in the back and just take it out as I use it. So this is why I came up with this piping paste, because I had this on hand and I decided to mix it together with the paste, and this is how I came up with the piping paste. So now I'm going to show you guys how I make the actual topping, which is the paste for the conchitas. For the concha paste, I'm using this recipe. It's 1 cup of powdered sugar to 2 cups of all-purpose flour to 1 cup of vegetable shortening. I'm going to mix all of these things together until I form a dough. I used to use instead of the powdered sugar, I used to use regular sugar, and ever since I started doing this kind of recipe, I feel like the piping paste comes out much better, as well as the actual paste itself. When I'm putting it on the conchas, it's much more pliable than the sugar one for some reason, or at least I like this one better. So here I'm just mixing it until it combines into a dough, and at this point I either store it or color it with whatever colors I'm gonna be using, and I place it in the refrigerator. This can be placed in the refrigerator. A lot of people don't refrigerate it, they just leave it in the countertop. You could use any kind of coloring to color it, and now I'm gonna show you how I actually make the concha paste. Okay, now I have the 2 things ready that I need to make the piping paste or the concha paste. So here I'm just adding a bit of the concha paste. I want to say maybe like half a teaspoon. I'm not using a lot because I do not need a lot, and a little bit goes a long way. And you could either choose to pre-color and use pre-colored concha paste, or use all white and then add your color once you're mixing. Here I already had a green and I needed green, so I use this and I add more green to it to intensify the color. Another thing that I want to share with you guys is, if you don't want to add a lot of food dye to your concha piping paste, you could do this a couple of days ahead of time. The same thing applies to this as if you were making buttercream and you want the color to develop. You could make it and leave it in the refrigerator and leave it there for a couple of days, and the color will turn darker, will develop over time. Now, the consistency that I always like to look for is for a stiff piping consistency. That the best example that I could give you guys is, if you guys have ever used royal icing and you need a a stiff consistency, so basically something that is not going to lose its shape but is still able to pipe. That's the same consistency that I look for when I'm making the Concha piping paste. The same thing. It's stiff enough that it's not going to lose its shape, but it's still soft enough that you're able to pipe it out. And that's going to ensure that when you put your conchas to bake, that you're not going to lose your designs. They're not going to turn to mush. As far as storing this concha piping paste, the same applies as for your regular concha paste. If you have any leftover, make sure that you put it in a airtight container and store it. If you leave it out in the open, it's gonna grab any type of taste or smell that it's in the refrigerator. It will grab it, and you will taste it. So make sure you always store it in an airtight container. And I like to place mine in the refrigerator as well, all the way in the back of my refrigerator, and take it out as I need it. And that's why I say also that I always like to make small amounts, because a little bit goes a long way. Here I'm showing you guys how it pipes. It pipes really good. This is an example. This red one that I'm using right here, I made it with the old recipe that I used to use for the concha paste, and it's a bit more runny. And this brown one right here, I made it with the new version of the paste that I like to use now, with the powdered sugar. And I feel like it works much better. It's much easier to pipe with, and it holds the shape better. Here's an example of how I use the piping paste for my conchas. Don't forget to go and check this video out. I will show you how to make these adorable mushroom themed conchas. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you.